Hello everyone, it's History Surfer. Welcome back. Well, the website, my YouTube channel is History Surfer. It's Dr. A. Welcome back to History Surfer. That kind of makes more sense, huh? And today I'm doing a video for my art appreciation class, and it is on the topic of printmaking. So let's talk about printmaking. Let me see if I can't get this a little less crooked. You know, it's always a process here at History Surfer. Let's start out by talking about what printmaking does. It's a process that involves transferring images from a matrix or template onto another surface, usually paper or fabric. The artist inks the template and transfer it onto another surface. Traditional printmaking methods include woodcut, etching, engraving, and lithography, and they all require a printing press to provide even pressure. The printmaking process lets artists create many images of the same thing, and throughout history it's observed as an affordable way to communicate and share art. So it's about duplication and making things available to many people at one time. So let's look at the first instance that we actually, as far as we know, can find printmaking. The first printmaking that we have knowledge of began in Han Dynasty, China. It is a woodblock print on silk and has been dated, as you can see, about 220 BCE. The first print on paper was made during the 7th century. So this is definitely where we see a difference. The ground, in other words, what you're putting it on, is going to change and it'll fluctuate. The original form of printmaking, this sample you see here, used a small wooden board as a matrix and carved away the wood, which would create negative space on the print after the ink was transferred onto fabric or paper. It's the Chinese who would introduce movable type sometime between 1041 and 1048, and now we're talking CE, and improved on the design over the coming centuries. Bookmaking became much more possible with this technology. Since then, it has blossomed and it serves many purposes. In Western history, we always look back to printmaking as beginning with Johannes Gutenberg, who developed the European movable type. Really, in China, it's really first, but those letters that were made movable type were made with clay. What Gutenberg really makes a difference with is he uses metal. Gutenberg was a person trained in working in metal, and he had his type made from that. It was an alloy of lead tin, and it is this metal type that really makes everything much cleaner, and we have high quality books being produced at first. These things would make enormous impact on the history of the West, especially with learning. Gutenberg's most famous book ever printed is, of course, the Gutenberg Bible, and with that, he just makes, you know, the availability of text, I should say, is really just explodes. It was so rapid spreading that when German printers began immigrating, they had printing presses emerge in Venice. For example, I'm using Venice, in 1469, and by 1500 the city had 417 printers. So in that very short time it blossoms. By the early 16th century, we have masters. Let me change something here real quick. In the printmaking emerge, and the most notable was Albrecht Dürer. He's going to turn the attention away from books, and he will bring printmaking to art. He worked in woodcuts, etchings, dry points, and metal engravings. Dürer is probably the most influential early printmaker. And let me back up here a little bit so that you can see his name. Sorry about that. It's because I changed the view. I forgot to switch over to slideshow. Sorry. Dürer becomes the person who brings printmaking into Italy, and also it is he that is followed for most of at least the early 16th century, late 15th century. We see him being the one who influences all these northern printmakers. Printmaking was very popular in the northern part of Europe. Another notable person from this era, I'll show you a couple more Dürers though. You can see how he brought great detail to his subject, and his work really influenced printmaking all over Europe. Another person who had a big impact on early printmaking was Albrecht Altdorfer, and he was the first person to print landscapes. It was him who made this idea that all art that could be transferred into prints. So that's going to emerge as a way for artists to make money. While some of them did not make prints themselves, they, like Raphael, hired people to make prints for them. So Marcantonio Raimondi is based on Raphael, and it was agreement that he had with Raphael to make prints. So now they come into their own as a way to make art and a way to copy art. And this will be important because it's going to be printmaking that makes newspapers and publications so, accessible. The Dream of Raphael is a good example of Marcantonio's work. And you see here, again, the detail. And you can see here the etching process. It's very detailed work. By the time we get to the 17th century, printmaking was definitely a commercialized and reproductive medium, but also a way to be more creative. And Italy would slowly become the center for the technique of acid etching. The printmaker Guido Reni developed the distinctive Italian style of delicate lines and dots, as you can see here. And this is what's called acid etching. But never forget that most people consider Rembrandt as one of the most masterful printmakers. His etchings have stood the test of time. He had roughly 300 plates, and he rendered everything from religious and historical subjects to the most mundane activities. He explored every possibility of the etched line and later experimented with etching and dry point. In this century as well, Rembrandt and this is all Rembrandt's work, fellow artists became very interested in looking at Japanese art. That's heavily influenced in the West, and certainly by the 19th century, huge in the West. Ukiyo-ya is a Japanese art form produced in Japan that flourished and produced images that really were about everyday life. They were street scenes, peddlers and crowds as subject matter. Things that really hadn't interested people before in the Japanese world became very much about, let's do this. We can definitely see masters in the art form showing us everyday life. Maranubu is one of them. And these were images that people would buy. I almost think of them as kind of like postcards in a way, or posters, I should say. By the 18th century, famous artists like Canaletto were doing these beautiful printed graphics with inventive use of lines and texture. He's definitely working with color and light in his printed graphic. He's an architectural printmaker, really. We see lots and lots of images. Canaletto spent a lot of time in Venice, so we do have quite a bit of his work. In the or really they weren't newspapers yet. They were called broadsides. And we also have books with illustrations in them. But William Hogarth was a satirist who worked and made things for public consumption. And he did a bunch of series like this one, The Harlot's Progress. But look how now elaborate we're looking at. It is definitely not a crude art form anymore. It is definitely something that has emerged into an art form in its own right at this point. And by the 19th century, the Impressionist and the Post-Impressionist would take the influence of printmaking and push it to a new direction. Henri Toulouse-Lautrec was really simplifying images based on Japanese woodcuts. And he was bringing this simplification of form into the Western consciousness. He worked a lot in Montmartre, and he is going to be a prolific printmaker, especially working in lithographs and really, really highlighting this simplification in form. He worked a lot, especially with people like Jeanne Avril. She was a famous dancer in the Moulin Rouge. And you can see these were advertisements at the same time. They were considered groundbreaking. It would be, though, definitely Japanese artists who continued to flourish with their printmaking techniques. For those of you who don't get to watch this lecture in class, please be sure to go and look at the playlist. And I have a film there from YouTube, or a little short documentary about Hokusai's work, The Great Wave off Kanagawa. It is definitely one of the images that has settled into worldwide consciousness, I think. I know it was used as I think it was a meme at one point. No, it was an emoji. I take that back. And you have to realize this Great Wave image isn't just about that one image. There were, really, it was a series, 36 views of Mount Fuji. The artist, Hokusai, was in his 70s when he started printmaking in this fashion. And in fact, I was interested in that. He felt really you don't become truly creative until you're between the ages of 60 and 80. If you look at the other images from the series, every image has that image of Mount Fuji in it. They're also using Prussian blue for the first time, so it's very saturated with this beautiful blue tone. And please watch that film I have, because they talk about Prussian blue. Mount Fuji is what it's all about. And this simplification of form is quite obviously part of the aesthetic of the Japanese printmaking techniques. And there again we see Mount Fuji. It is a beautiful piece. I'm sure some of you recognize it, even if right now, you know, you're thinking, no, I don't know that when I was talking about it, but now maybe you do. By the 20th century, photography was really at the forefront, and art was no longer necessary as a reproduction tool. So printmaking really returned to creativity and experimentation. Many, many artists explored printmaking, and while Pablo Picasso was most known for his paintings, he too experimented in printmaking and created over 1,000 prints and woodcuts. He did use not only woodcuts, but lino cuts, lithographs, etchings, dry points, and engravings. So this was a very fresh, new way to explore things after after the invention of photography, because now it didn't have to be for the newspaper. You could do it for whatever you wanted. I hope you enjoyed this lecture on printmaking. I am excited to get this one done and move on. Photography hopefully will be next. Have a good day, everyone. Peace out. I will see you in class.